Chris back, Chris Barnes for I think it's your 4th time on the podcast. I was actually thinking like Chris been on a few times now. Expedite, very formerly DLIVRD. And part of the reason that I first contacted him, I'm just glad he's on in general because we have some questions. He's going to sit in through the podcast. But you guys all know me. David Pickerell and I are great friends. We met during the pandemic and before Para even started, and I fell into that with him. So part of the question I was asking Chris involved what David's doing. That's how confused I was. I'm like, why are there 4 hands in the cookie jar? Like, why is there DLIVRD, Expedite, GigSafe, and Giggee? And I mean, it shouldn't concern people, but I guess first, thank you, Chris, for joining. I always appreciate you taking the time. Can we just start there? Like, I did not know about Giggee being a part of GigSafe, I'll be honest, until I saw it come through for you with the onboarding stuff. And then I talked to another user that we all know, or many of us know, Tim. I won't go any farther than Tim, but like Tim didn't go through that process. And I was like, wait, then why did I? And what's going on? So I don't know if that's enough of a lead in for you to kind of.
Yeah, no, it is. And my 4th time. So I think I'm officially a friend of the show. So
you're a friendly.
Thanks for having me, Steve. And I always love coming on podcasts in general, especially this one, because I think something that we've always struggled with is having a good dialogue with a remote fleet that's nationwide, and whether we send emails, people read it, any of this stuff. So I always love taking these topics and having this opportunity to get into a little bit more detail. So thank you. But I guess maybe just starting at the top, because we've got DLIVRD and Expedite, and then there's also GigSafe and Giggee. So maybe just starting with DLIVRD and like what's going on with the DLIVRD brand. We did convert DLIVRD, we launched really DLIVRD Technologies Incorporated. That's going to be a parent company moving forward. It's got a portfolio of smaller companies underneath it, one of those being Expedite. And the general idea, and it's a little bit of a swing that Chris Heffernan is like really trying, is that we do different things under the DLIVRD brand, and we think we're good at it. And we think that if we're good at these different items, these different concepts, well, let's make them its own company, go out there and try to sell it to the marketplace, maybe get customers that aren't even, our typical delivery customers. And that'll make more sense as I talk through some things. But basically, this allows us to have Expedite do this, and our marketing company do that, and our gig-facing company do this, all under that DLIVRD brand. So Expedite is our delivery technology. Expedite is our driver app, our dispatching offering system, our client-facing app, our client-facing portal. Basically, anything that facilitates last mile delivery is under this Expedite brand. Expedite's also the one out there signing contracts with restaurants, trying to get them through. So DLIVRD, again, the big parent, and now here I run Expedite, the day-to-day underneath that. So we did rebrand the driver app to be Expedite, same exact thing, but rebranded. Our pay card was always Expedite. Our client-facing technology was always Expedite. This kind of like plunge into Expedite was something that we actually debated for like a year and a half, because we had already been using the term Expedite for our technology internally, but we were so married to the name DLIVRD. And in part of kind of like a lot of the big things we're doing, we finally decided to make the plunge of making Expedite its own standalone. And it's definitely confusing to do that in the middle, to do a rebrand at any time. But Expedite, it's way easier to spell. It's way easier to give people my email when I'm using Expedite. And I think it also does speak to what we're trying to accomplish with our delivery technology: fast, speedy delivery. Expedite is that classic old school delivered, concept. If you went to our DLIVRD website, well, that's giving you a peek of everything we're working on the corporate level, some of the companies that we've acquired, some of the new paths that we're going down. So both could have useful information, but it's really, again, the people who have seen me on this podcast in the past, it's really in the Expedite domain that we're talking.
Now the integration of GigSafe, Giggee.
Cool. Okay, so GigSafe and Giggee. So GigSafe, Giggee, you don't. But Giggee is another new entity under DLIVRD Tech. So DLIVRD said basically, hey, we have experience in servicing the needs of the gig workforce, both with regard to recruiting and onboarding, but also understanding the needs of a client, Expedite being the client, and servicing them. And so what we said is, hey, we're going to create Giggee to help onboard, recruit, and retain drivers for Expedite. But we're also building Giggee so that we can go out there and get other clients that aren't Expedite either. Now, GigSafe, and I'll talk about that more in a second. GigSafe is almost like Every. Giggee is using Every to facilitate payments and using GigSafe to facilitate insurances and background checks and kind of that administrative stuff. But Giggee is building itself to be more than that. Giggee should go out there and get a client, understand their needs, have client support for them, work together to kind of come up with what they're looking for in the gig workspace. And then as needed, say, okay, great, well, we'll use GigSafe for your background checks. We'll use, again, Every for the payments. But Giggee is another entity of DLIVRD Tech where we're saying, hey, this is something we do already. Let's go out and make it its own company and try to bring in some revenue on its own. So now instead of our legacy DLIVRD, we're using GigSafes, and suddenly immediately we got to have them contracted to meet those insurance needs. It has to have that exact MVR. And that's where you saw us have this really big project of moving 10,000 drivers all at the same time to go through this GigSafe funnel. But Giggee, so again, in that regard, GigSafe is front and center. Where I'm kind of happy you mentioned David, I'm also a big GigSafe fan. I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan of David and GigSafe, but I'm also a fan of the concept in general. I've been in this industry for a long time. I worked really closely with DDI for a long time. I had to fight. Whatever company I was at, I had to fight for DDI along the way because my owners never want to pay for it because to them it's just insurance. You only use it when you need it. But I always thought that it was an important resource because they're the ones who help actually understand what it is to be a gig worker and help facilitate that model, in a compliant way for everybody. I think that GigSafe does that as well. But again, us bringing GigSafe on brought a lot of different requirements and needs that we had to get accomplished, essentially by September 1st. Yeah, no effect on pay. And how is that the case? We had the option to charge for the MVR, for example, but we got that covered through this process. Our orders are the orders. We already had things like the insurance consideration factored into our payments. So it really is no impact to the driver. All of that said, though, we had our own requirements and our own checks, but I'd say GigSafe is far superior with keeping up with insurances and the renewals and really strict with regard to registration. And they really do it very by the book. There are absolutely some drivers that unfortunately didn't make it through that process with us. So, I would say in that regard, it was very impactful to a lot of people. But I'd say if you were somebody who your name's on your registration, your name's on your insurance, you've got a clean driving record, there was no gimmick here. This was really just about you getting onto what meets those new insurances needs. And yeah, to the degree of over explanation, it's a hard one. It's on one hand, I hate the idea of changing our name to the Expedite app and not explaining to the fleet what's going on. But then almost to your point, it's does it really matter? You know what I mean? Because you open up the app, it's the same orders and all of that. So it's a tough one for sure. I get your point. I'd say I do think you're kind of suggesting that we were transparent and I appreciate it. But I think we still have to kind of dial in how we communicate with our fleet because we're transparent, but I know that there's definitely people still out there who either missed the message or didn't understand it. So, I think there's still definitely a lot of growth and improvement to be had.
Made me wonder, with as much as it was coming up, I'm guaranteeing a lot of people didn't. Or
this was a really scary proposition for us. We again, I'm being very honest here. There were drivers that didn't complete it. Now, those drivers still have every opportunity to. Every day, we still see more come in. But going into the busy season, we saw a large group of drivers no longer be eligible for orders. That was frightening. I was losing my mind. But it really went well. But there are definitely some markets that went better than others. So I'd say above all, the markets that you would think, New York, Boston, those were definitely markets where we saw like more of an impact. Those are definitely markets where right now I'm being more aggressive with bringing on, new drivers. And they're markets where we're actually super busy right now, like going into the fall. So I mean, we're still licking our wounds a little bit, if you would say, but we're doing it in a way that we're proud of. We think this was the right choice. It's more compliant, and we'll be okay. We know it'll all work out.
And in fact, I see a couple things coming up here, and one of them I can relate to. So Kim in Chicago um, is saying, will there be any adjustments to the qualifications for the 4 Emerald Elite, or for Tier 4 Emerald Elite? It feels like everybody's on this now.
Yeah, well, I should say maybe. I don't want to say yes that there's going to be adjustments because I don't want to commit to that yet.
Sure.
But what I definitely want to commit to is that we're looking at it. There are, because when it comes to oversaturation, like that's something that I've really kind of staked my career in many ways of fighting against. Like I am not. It is such a knee-jerk reaction for people to say, "Oh, we had a bad day today. Bring on more drivers." And I've really fought against that in a lot of ways. I know that's not exactly the same as the Emerald 4, but I guess my point is like I am sensitive to that. And there are certainly a couple markets in particular where we have seen saturation be more of a problem with the Emerald 4s having too many. In particular, it's markets I'd say that do a ton of volume that are relatively easy. So like New York, for example, I don't have oversaturation there because unfortunately it's pretty hard to be on time there compared to like some other markets that just for whatever reason have easier grids. But where we are definitely reviewing, I'd say like every piece of it is, I don't want to go too deep into it, but like our pickup time, you have to be exactly on time. Is that
Yes.
really what I want? Or do I want you to actually be there 5 minutes early?
Here's Ceci. She said she was settling into her new house, and this is what I call it, because Curry does this as well. You and I have talked about this. This is what I call I don't know if maybe it doesn't relate to you anymore, but a soft deactivation where you can just email and get back on, but maybe that's not the case.
I would assume that's the case in this one. So, Nomadic Gig Mom, I'm sorry, I don't have your info in front of me, but we definitely do essentially put drivers onto idle if you haven't done an order recently, and by no means trying to like hurt anybody, but more me here I am saying like I don't want to be oversaturated. Part of where like I would struggle with that is if I have all these accounts that aren't actually doing orders, then I have no choice but to come in and kind of pull in more and more. But typically, if your account was on idle, simply you're in good standing, you haven't done anything wrong, you just haven't taken an order recently, just contact our support team and they should be able to get you back live. So I think that you could see in certain markets where suddenly less competition, and so more orders. But I think the part that, again, we talk about transparency a lot, and I think the part that our listeners here have no transparency on, that's got to be so hard. You have no idea how many total orders there are. And I think in a lot of cases that sometimes is actually what's going on. Either we're seeing a big boost in orders in some markets, or for whatever reason we're seeing a drop in others. And and I think a lot of that just comes down to also like we're dependent on others to give us orders. So sometimes I'm kind of in the same boat going to my vendors, but I think more times than not, when I get a message about somebody saying, "Oh, since this change, I haven't seen the orders," it seems like order volume. And again, you don't have the transparency, and that's something I'd love to kind of figure out a way. But that's almost always kind of like the simplest answer that more times than not is the real answer.
He's using a dollar amount, so $120 order, let's say $1,500 order. Those are going to take much longer, and it could, who knows what your cart size is, your bags, all that could take multiple load ins and setup and all that. So I hear you, even on not just the amount of even if it was 120 and 120. I've had ones that are 120 going more miles that I can do in the time set from the app. But then I'll have one going like 1 mile to downtown Denver. And for those that don't live in big cities, million plus, like I do, or like Chris does, so like in my city, like to get downtown and park and get and deal with security at these buildings and use their carts and get a pass, you have to trade your ID for it. I mean, a lot of these buildings do this. And I mean, a lot of times I'll be at the you should be done point and I'm still getting credentials to go upstairs.
I think like one thing that I try to avoid when I come on to a podcast like this, but I'm going to violate it for a moment. I don't like to say Easy Cater by name because I don't speak for them. I'm not them, but this is something that they have given me specific permission to talk about. And that's the fact that if you're taking an order that they're most likely, we're talking about an Easy Cater order here, they're the ones who are setting that pickup time that gets sent to us. And where I'm going with it is when we're talking about a large order versus a small order, you really arguably should have more time for that large order because that padding between the pickup and delivery time should be longer than in small orders. Now, where like part of this is me trusting them, but then also telling me they're watching data, they're continuously improving, they're trying to like continue, it's such an imperfect science that also really requires the restaurant to be on time. But they're constantly, what I can promise, they've done 10 times better than when we were setting it ourselves. I mean, 10 times better. Like they have so much more data than us and so many more like resources. But what I would also say that like this part's going to sound bad, but sometimes us being late to a delivery actually helps them improve that for the next time. So Steve, when you're saying that you got to this one and it took you 15 minutes to get it, and if that's something that's happening continuous, they've got the machine learning that that's going to get baked in for that address. And that's going to help the next driver. Now that didn't help you, I know.
Right, but then it doesn't backtrack and go, we'll help correct that and the other people who had problems there.
Yeah, and listen, the only I hear you 100%, except that again, I'm in the exact same boat. If you were late on that order, I was late on that order too, and I'm out there trying to be late as little as possible so that I can get as many orders on our platform. I think again, is that easy for me to say? Well, it's really the truth though, And so when I am working with Easy Cater and we're reviewing the data, I'm highly motivated for you not to be late on that order because like this wasn't Steve late delivered on time or Expedite on time, it's definitely both of us. But I would say, and again, I know for sure we could say, oh no, not this order, not that order, but by and large orders have more padding between the pickup and delivery than small orders. And just because we say that you're not supposed to drop off 15 minutes early, that doesn't mean you can't walk in 25 minutes early. Walk in 25 minutes and you've got that extra time to drop it off. So again, knowing that it's not perfect, I would counter to say that the average large order should have more padding in there to allow you to still hit the drop-off time.
So like, here are my scores. I'm going to be honest because all of you guys are going to hear my scores. They're not good. For a long time, like the first time I had Chris, it was, hey, we want you to look at and accept or decline every offer that we send you, but we understand you could be driving, so it doesn't affect you, but it kind of helps us a bit. And that was for a long time. And then it was also the early one, it was kind of that same wording, like, well, it was like real iffy. And then it was integrated, and this is into the old DLIVRD. And then when that happened and now it's Expedite and whatnot, but now, so my on-time pickup is 100%. My response rate is 64.18. And my on-time delivery is 60%, but I've never been late, ever. Every one of those that are the on-time were from the old way, and I was early. And it was during that time when it was like, well, it doesn't hurt you in any way, but you should do this.
To take out of, well, I mean, first off, I'd say by far 3 times more than anything else, the fact you have 100% pickup on time is the most heavily weighted item of the algorithm, like by far. And why do we do that? Well, I mean, I think for a lot of reasons, obviously, like an order needs to have pickup on time to have everything else kind of fall in line. But it's also the one where there should be the least amount of potential BS. Right, you know what I mean? Like you're not waiting on the guy up front, or like for the most part, like you should be able to be on time to the pickup. The lowest part of the algorithm by far is your response rate. I think we're talking about, if you're talking about the response rate,
yeah,
sure there's improvements, but like we're like it is so tiny in the algorithm. It's almost like we're fighting over grains of sand in here. Where like I would say what I liked last time I was here when you made the suggestion of the auto decline. Now that one, like, you're not going to be turning that on constantly, but at least that one was a little bit more like concrete. Hey, I'm walking away. Like, and so at least now we got that additional tool to help with it.
I believe that's called the Steve feature.
There you go. That's the Steve, and I used the Steve the other day. For the average driver, I'm hoping like a good bit of runway that they had so they didn't feel like the rug got pulled out from under them. Now, again, though, I think there could be a lot of debate about the rug itself. the metrics themselves, the timing themselves. I mean, we could go on all day long.
Oh yeah.
But I hope that most people had an opportunity to at least understand it and adjust.
No, and mine will correct, but I mean it's going to take a while, and but to hear you say it doesn't have as much value, I almost think like even maybe in the score, like putting, just showing on time to pick up or whatever, and then touch it for the sub menus that are the other two, if they're really that little of a difference. Because when you put them all three out there, here's how I see it. I see that all three of these matter equally. That's how I take it.
Yeah, and that's definitely not the case. And so I appreciate that feedback.
Gary's bringing up the point that I already mentioned, but Chris Heffernan had said, yeah, you have that ability, but we don't like that. And I understand that. My thing was like, well, what if I'm in a single cell? I got to take the picture. But now with the new way of doing things, do you guys mind if the pictures are being uploaded? Or is that still a thing you really prefer through the app?
So you mean like, let's say you weren't, well, the app's not going to let you proceed without uploading. So like that might be.
No. I mean, like, if you go in early and set up.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think like there's kind of the early and then there's the late. So starting with the late, for example, you're doing a big setup. And clearly it's going to end up finished after that 5 minutes, but the customer's happy. You're in the middle of things. Go ahead and take a picture, even if it's not fully complete, upload it in, and then you can even send us the final picture afterward. And again, I don't like talking about EasyCater very much, but they've totally got.
No, you're not.
No, I guess I mean, not but I don't want to sound like I'm gaming them. Like they've totally approved that. And in fact, they've come to me and said, hey, we don't want to hurt your best drivers. We know some people take care. Like if you're in this situation, like handle it like that. As far as being early, like I'm a little less like kind of putting my stamp on it of like, I would love to say that we're not finishing the order, more than 15 minutes early. But again, I would say like, you guys know the rules of the engagement, proceed accordingly, and that's probably the best for everybody.
If he's at the delivery and he's setting it up, he's taking a picture, is my guess, and submitting it to be, I was on time, it's done, even if he's still setting up.
Yeah.
Is that something you endorse? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like especially we've got a large setup or I don't even know. I mean, maybe it is one of these situations where you're waiting for the customer for 15 minutes. These rules are set because there are certain customers out there that are spending a lot of money on this, right? They're spending a delivery fee and they're spending a tip, and we want to give them top-notch service. And so we want to make sure that all their expectations are met. But the truth is, for every one of those customers, there's another one who saunters down, 10 minutes late and truly doesn't care about the exact time. And it's hard to have, one set of rules that fit for everybody. But I would say, yeah, I mean, if you're clearly there, you're clearly working with the client, with the customer, and you want to upload a photo, and then especially if maybe you haven't even begun the setup and you send us the final photo after, we'll happily re-upload and get that all like tied up.
And then just show the other ones as one. Yeah, here's more stats, but they don't matter as much, guys. Because people need to feel that.
Yeah, I mean, the part I definitely agree is like, I mean, it's like very common for a driver who's got 100 Emerald status to reach out. I don't want to say fighting. I mean, like not fighting, but like fighting over like one missed like timeout. And I'm like, we're literally talking about 0.00001 of your score. Like it's like not even worth the time. We both lost money by even like writing and like responding to this email. But I get your point that might not be being, being portrayed in the numbers that are there.
I mean, the way anybody can disagree in the chat, but the way all of us that I know see it is when we go into something like that and there's 3 stats and a big Emerald score above it, we're just going to assume all of those are 33.333% each, making up that score.
Well, that's good to know. That's good feedback.
My area is so big that some of the orders I see could be literally 40, 50 minutes away, still in Denver, but that's how far away it is from me. I wish that I could have 2 or even at best 3 where I could set 3 zones. Like my close zone here, show me everything. I don't care. This is where I live. Great. Show me this. And then a bigger loop saying, don't show me anything above 30 in this zone. And then over, like for me, Littleton would take me 50 minutes at any time of day to get down there from where I am. Don't show me anything under $50 for that. It seems like you guys would save a lot of data money because I see them all the time. Why you send them to me?